He laughed when he heard, "You will go again." And a second later, the impossible happened. He didn't believe in miracles. His life was built on formulas, numbers, and strategies, until that night. When he woke up, he could no longer walk. And a few weeks later, he met a boy who seemed to appear out of nowhere and offered the impossible. He didn't know that this wasn't just a story about healing. This was a story about how sometimes, in order to start living, you first have to lose everything. Stephen Clark has always known how to calculate risk. 30 years in business have taught him one thing. If you control the data, you control everything. He knew the exact statistics of accidents on intercity highways. He knew which neighborhoods were not worth parking in, which days of the week business meetings were most often canceled. He even drank coffee only from establishments where the flow of customers exceeded 400 people a day. This meant stability, and stability means predictable quality. Stephen's life was planned down to the minute. Tuesday, October 29th. He was driving his Mercedes E-Class on I-94, returning from Madison, where he had been negotiating with potential investors for a new project. The evening was cool. Visibility was excellent. He didn't listen to music, preferring silence. Everything seemed normal. Until a van loaded with concrete blocks veered into oncoming traffic. It took him a moment to realize what had happened. First, there was a loud grinding noise. Then, deafening silence. Then, the sharp, ear-piercing sound of a heart monitor. He woke up in a hospital. There was a man in a white coat standing next to him. Stephen tried to sit up, but he couldn't. He looked down. His legs were under the blanket, motionless. He tried to move his fingers. Nothing. "Mr. Clark," the doctor said with a slight Indian accent, "we've done everything we can. Your spinal cord is severely damaged. The blow was right at L1, L2. I have to tell you, the chances of you walking again are extremely low." Stephen stared at the ceiling. He didn't breathe. He didn't shout. He didn't ask a single question. He just stared, as if his brain refused to register what he was hearing. A couple of hours later, his business partner came to see him, then his younger sister. He spoke to everyone calmly, in a businesslike manner. He even joked. On the third day, he was discharged for home rehabilitation. The doctors insisted on hospitalization, but he refused. "I'm not going to lie around in bed and discuss acceptance. I have other things to do," he told the nurse who was trying to hand him the therapist's contact information. 2 weeks have passed. His Upper West Side apartment became an island of alienation. He cut himself off from everyone. He fired his personal driver, refused to quit, and disconnected his personal phone number. He ordered food through an app, with instructions. "Leave at the door. Do not call." Stephen tried not to look at his reflection. His face had become alien. Graying stubble, drooping eyelids, some kind of empty eyes. But the worst thing was something else. He felt like a brain locked in a body that no longer obeyed. He never thought he would become disabled. Not him. Not Stephen Clark. One morning, he opened his mailbox and found a strange envelope without a stamp or address. It had only one word written on it. "You can still." Inside was a picture of a little man walking up the stairs. A child's drawing, uneven, as if it had been drawn with a felt-tip pen. He threw it away immediately, and then took it back out. Put it on the kitchen table. Not because he believed it, just because he had nothing else to do on his schedule, and the silence in the apartment was starting to drive him crazy. The next day, he went outside for the first time. No purpose, just to ride in his stroller. He rode a few blocks, noticed how people looked away, as if he were contagious. On the way back, at the door of the house, he noticed a boy. He looked about 9 years old. He was wearing a dirty jacket and worn jeans. His face was clear. His eyes were dark and calm. He was standing right in front of the entrance and looking at Stephen. "Are you Clark?" he asked simply. Stephen froze. "Who are you?" "I'm Jamie. I was sent." "Who sent you?" "Someone who knows. Do you want to walk again?" Stephen chuckled. "Want to earn a couple of dollars? Better go to the shelter. They'll help you there." "I'm not after the money. You won't believe it. But you'll go." The boy held out his hand. It contained another postcard. It had the same little man on it. But now he was standing. And behind him stood someone else, a taller silhouette with an outstretched arm. "Who is this?" asked Stephen, unconsciously taking the card. "His name is Eli. He can help. But you have to want it yourself." "And where is he?" "I'll show you. But not now. Think about it for now." Stephen wanted to ask something else, but the boy had already turned the corner. He drove there. Empty. Not a trace. Not a scrap of paper. Not a street noise. Just the feeling that someone was leading him and knew exactly where. Stephen didn't believe in signs. He thought that if you saw something that wasn't there, it was time to see a psychiatrist. But from the day he met the boy, something inside him seemed to be stuck. He couldn't get the voice or the look out of his head. Especially the look. Not a child's look. Calm, like people who had been through too much. He convinced himself it was just a coincidence, that the guy had heard about it, maybe seen it on the news after the accident, read it somewhere, or most likely was just begging with an original presentation. And the postcards, anyone could have drawn them, maybe even himself. But a week passed, and he still kept the second postcard on the table. He laid it out next to the first one. He looked at it. At night. Silently. Without explanation. He no longer answered calls from business partners. They wrote, "We need to approve the quarterly report. The client from Atlanta is nervous. They don't want to move without you. It's time for you to get in line. We're all waiting." He deleted messages. He opened his laptop and closed it. Everything that had once given meaning now caused a dull fatigue. Sometimes he thought, why do I need legs if I have nowhere else to go? His caregiver was an older woman named Emma. He hired her through an agency, and she showed up in the morning, brought him breakfast, helped him shower, and left for lunch. They barely spoke. Emma didn't ask questions, and for that, he paid her more than was required. One day she asked, "Have you ever prayed? In church?" "No. I believe in reality." Emma nodded and didn't bring up the subject again. The next day he woke up to the smell of apple pie. She had left him in the kitchen, without a note, without an explanation. He didn't touch it. 10 days after their first meeting, he saw Jamie again. The boy sat on the front step. There was a plastic cup of some kind of soda next to him. He waited, as if he knew Stephen would be coming out that morning. "You've taken too long," Jamie said. "Is this blackmail?" Stephen raised his eyebrows. "No, it's a choice." "Who is this Eli?" "He's not a doctor, but he can cure you. Not because he's a sorcerer, because he's real." "There's a cult in the woods somewhere, right?" "What? Should I go to a tent, cry, and heal?" "You don't believe it. That's okay. You just want someone to say, 'You'll be the same again.' And it won't be." "Do you have parents?" "Yes, I did." "Where do you live?" "Wherever I need to." The boy spoke clearly, without emotion. It irritated Stephen. He was good at reading people. He could see through lies, manipulation. But now, nothing. Not a single crack. Just a certainty that was frightening. I'm not going to go somewhere in the middle of nowhere to listen to someone's stories. No need to listen. You need to come. See, if it doesn't suit you, you'll leave. But you won't leave. I know. Stephen wanted to laugh, to brush it off. But he couldn't, because deep down, there was still one fact that lingered. The boy had named Howard Bells. This was a man Stephen had known when he was 19. A mentor, a teacher at a local college. Died in a plane crash in 2007, and Stephen had never told anyone about him. Ever. Where is this place? He asked after a long pause. The state of Kentucky. Appalachia. We'll leave in the morning. Tomorrow. I'll think about it. You've already thought about it. You just don't know what you've already chosen. The boy stood up, picked up his empty glass, and walked away. Stephen watched him go. The word Appalachia echoed in his head. He had never been there, never wanted to, and yet, the next morning, he asked Emma to pack her things. Where are we going? She asked, surprised. To Kentucky. To relax? I hope not. They left New York early in the morning. Jamie arrived with 2 tattered backpacks and an old tablet. He barely spoke on the way. He only occasionally gave directions, as if he knew where and when to turn. He didn't use the GPS. On the 4th day of the journey, when the asphalt gave way to a dirt road, Stephen felt something strange. Not anxiety, but resignation. As if for the first time he had stopped fighting something he couldn't calculate. The car stopped at an old wooden arch covered in moss. Beyond it was a narrow road into the forest. No signs, no cameras, not a single sign of civilization. Here? Stephen asked. Almost, Jamie replied. The rest is on foot. But don't worry, someone's already waiting. Stephen looked around. The forest was quiet, as if listening, and for the first time since the accident, he thought not of the body, but of the fact that he was not alone. They walked for about 1 kilometer along a well-trodden path. Jamie walked ahead, calmly, as if he were at home. Stephen moved in the sidecar, the motor of which was already starting to overheat on the uneven ground. After a few minutes, the forest parted, and before them there was a place that seemed not to exist. No signs, no road signs, no cell phone reception. Just an open clearing surrounded by hills and a few wooden buildings. Simple, like they were from the last century. In the middle of the clearing was a fire pit. Next to it was a large common veranda where someone was cutting vegetables. People were moving slowly, unhurriedly, as if they were in no hurry. Stephen had expected anything from hermits to hippies, but there was something different here. Everything seemed too calm, as if nothing bad had happened here for a long time. Or maybe it had, but no one was afraid anymore. We're here, Jamie said. Who are all these people? The ones who stayed. The rest are gone. Some for good. Some on their own 2 feet. They were met by a woman of about 40. Her name was May. She didn't ask any questions. She just smiled and said, "We have a spare room, with warm water. If you need anything, just let me know." Stephen wanted to check the cost of the stay, the procedure, the schedule, the food, but she was already gone, as if it wasn't necessary here, or as if everything he was used to controlling didn't matter here. The room was simple. A bed, a wooden chair, a window overlooking the forest. On the nightstand lay a neatly folded cloth. He unfolded it. Inside was a third postcard. This time, a man walking up a slope, his leg bandaged. He cursed. "What the hell is going on?" Jamie, as luck would have it, disappeared. He didn't show up all day. In the evening, Stephen went to the common veranda. 6 people were sitting at a long table. No one looked at him with pity. Someone nodded. One woman, Hannah, simply placed a bowl of soup in front of him. He ate in silence, watching out of the corner of his eye. Surprisingly, no one talked about God, faith, salvation. Conversations were about the weather, trees, plans to build a greenhouse. Later, a tall man in a beige shirt approached him. He looked about 50. Short hair, strong posture, calm face. "Stephen, I'm Eli. Glad you made it." He extended his hand. Stephen shook it automatically. He didn't know what to expect. A charlatan's look? A preacher's? But there was something else in Eli's eyes. A calm, almost medical interest. "I was told you could help?" "I'm not treating. I'm just observing. Your body knows how to recover. But first, you have to stop fighting it." "Sorry, but that sounds like empty talk." "Maybe. But you still stayed. That means something inside is tired of resisting." Eli was silent. Then he said, "We'll start tomorrow. Nothing complicated, just breathing and silence. The rest will come when it comes." He turned and walked away. No drama, no promises. Stephen stayed on the veranda, listened to the sounds of the night. The forest rustled as if it knew who had come. The next few days were strange. Every morning, Eli would come and sit silently across from him. 5 minutes. 10. No talking. Then he would say, "Breathe. Not with your mind, but with your body." Stephen was angry. He was not used to being passive. He wanted to know what exactly they were doing. He demanded a diagram, an algorithm, proof. But Eli did not answer. He said only one thing. "As long as you want to control, you do not trust. As long as you do not trust, the body will not move." On the 3rd day, Stephen snapped. "This is all a game of pseudo-spirituality. I'm not an idiot. I had a company with a turnover of 20 million a year. I'm used to reality." Eli just shrugged. "The problem isn't that you don't believe. It's that you're afraid of not being right." A week passed. One night, Stephen woke up from a sharp tingling in his legs. He sat up in bed, gasping for breath, clutching his thighs. It felt like needles were piercing his muscles. He called out to someone, but no one came. Only an hour later did the pain go away. In the morning, he didn't say anything. Eli, as usual, came and sat opposite. "Was it today?" he asked quietly. Stephen nodded. "Pain. But it was like the body remembered it was alive." Eli smiled. "It's just beginning." On the veranda, Stephen saw again the man who had been in the wheelchair on the first day. Today he was walking, slowly, with a stick, but on his own 2 feet. Their eyes met. The man nodded. Stephen watched him go for a long moment. He didn't know what he'd gotten himself into. He didn't know how it would end. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't care. Because maybe for the first time, he was starting to feel himself. The first thing he realized was that pain was good. Pain meant he could still feel, that nerves that shouldn't be there were still moving. But with that came something else. Fear, not for his body, for the fact that everything he knew about himself might be a lie. He didn't tell anyone about it. not even Eli. He just kept doing what he asked, breathing, watching, listening. Stephen had never meditated, had never done yoga, and had no belief in energy fields. But with each passing day, he felt more and more clearly that something was changing. Not on the outside, but on the inside. He began to notice little things: the smell of grass after the rain, the way the sun hid behind the hills, the sound of footsteps on a wooden floor. It was amazing how quickly you could get your peace back if you stopped ignoring it. In the 4th week, the attacks began. Convulsions, sharp flashes of pain in his back. He screamed. May came with warm towels, asked nothing. Sometimes Jamie would just sit next to him, silent as always. One day, he couldn't take it anymore. "Why are you here? Why aren't you with someone of your own?" "Because I'm where I'm supposed to be," the boy answered. "And what if it doesn't work out?" "Then you'll go back to being who you were." "That's what I'm afraid of," Stephen said, quietly, for the first time honestly. The next morning, when Eli came, Stephen didn't breathe. He just stared. And suddenly he said, "I hate myself." "For what?" "For being weak. For not coping. For losing everything." "Are you sure you've lost something? Maybe it's the other way around? That you've started to see something for the first time?" Stephen remained silent. Eli continued, "You know what real withdrawal is? It's not when your body hurts. It's when everything you thought you were falls apart." A few days later, toward evening, he woke up with a feeling of pressure in his feet. He looked carefully. Nothing had changed, but at night he felt it again. A light, barely noticeable current, as if blood was breaking through where it had not been for a long time. He did not sleep until dawn, not because of pain, but because hope turned out to be worse than the diagnosis. In the morning, he went out onto the veranda. Jamie was standing there. "What happens next?" Stephen asked. "You'll fall, and then you'll get up. And if it doesn't work out, you'll still get up, because now you're not the one who came here." For the first time, Jamie took his hand. Just like that. Without words. And somehow it worked better than any physical therapy. After 2 weeks, Eli suggested an exercise. "Hold on to the handrails. Try it. No pressure. Just give your body a signal." It was a cloudless morning. No one around. Stephen clutched the wooden railing. His heart was beating like it was on a treadmill. He didn't believe anything would happen. And yet, he tensed his arms, concentrated, leaned forward. And then, movement. Small, but distinct. Hips trembled. Light as breathing, rocking forward. He almost fell, but Eli caught him. "It's not a step. It's a flare," he said. "The body remembers, even if the mind is afraid." That night, he didn't go to bed. He sat on the veranda and looked at the darkening sky. He felt broken, but alive. He didn't know where this path led, but for the first time since the accident, he didn't want to go back. Because he realized his paralysis didn't start in his body. It was inside. And now that inner armor was starting to crack. He didn't remember exactly when he stood up, not in the sense of getting to his feet. It happened almost 2 months after the first movement. First for a few seconds, then for a minute, then with support. Everything was slow, uncertain, hard. But he didn't stand up when his legs gave in. He stood up when he stopped waiting for a miracle from the outside and started to simply live. He spent almost 3 months in the community. During this time, he went through a path that no business plan could have calculated. He learned to be silent, not as a demonstration, but as a skill of listening. He learned to accept help. He learned to laugh again, without cynicism. And most importantly, he no longer saw the wheelchair as a sentence. It was a condition, temporary, and maybe even a gift, the opportunity to stop. When he was about to leave, no one said goodbye. May handed him a bag of dried herbs, for the smell of home. Hannah said, "Now you know that a place is not a point on a map. It is a point in you." Jamie stood by the car. He didn't look upset. "Are you ready?" he asked. Stephen nodded. "Are you?" "I'm always ready. I just have one more thing to do." Stephen didn't ask what. Deep down, he knew it didn't matter, because he trusted now. Not blindly, just honestly. 3 months later, he returned to Chicago, sold his stake in the company. No regrets. It's amazing how easy it is to let go of something you've held on to all your life, when you realize it no longer defines you. He bought a building in the south of the city, a former school, partially destroyed. He renovated it, invited people from that very community. He called the center simply Step 1. First step. Those who came there were those who had been written off by official medicine, and those who had written themselves off. He did not promise miracles. He did not make diagnoses. He simply created a place where one could be weak. And that meant starting from the beginning. It took almost half a year to get the paperwork done. Child welfare services dragged their feet. Jamie had no papers, no official history, not even a date of birth. But the judge eventually signed the papers, looking into Stephen's eyes and asking, "Do you understand what you're getting into?" "Better than I've ever understood anything." So Jamie Clark became his son. Formally, at age 9, in fact, from the very day he stood at his door with a baby card. 2 years passed. One morning, Jamie came into Stephen's office. He sat down opposite him. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "I have to go." "Where to?" "Further." "Alone?" "Always." Stephen didn't answer. He knew. He'd known for a long time. And yet, his heart sank. "You did it," Jamie said. "That was the main thing. Now you can go on your own, and I'm going to go where someone doesn't believe again." Stephen stood up. He hadn't used a stroller in a long time. He hugged his son, not as a child, but as someone who had come when it was dark. A few months later, he received a postcard. No stamp, no signature. There was a man on it, walking down the road, and next to him, a new child. No words, just a drawing. Stephen smiled. He knew that somewhere else, a story had begun. A new one. He didn't consider himself healed. He considered himself alive.